Why do we fail? I'm not really asking that question in, in terms of what makes us fail, but in the Simon Sinek sense of why. What is the purpose of failing? And I think the answer is I'm on my way to the coffee shop. Haven't been here for a while. Um, Here on my live stream, walking over to the coffee shop. Morning, but I think we got all the technology issues hammered out, and we're back at it at this point. I walk over to the coffee shop every morning. I started doing this about 6 years ago because it um, gives me a chance, one for exercise certainly, but gives me a chance to take a break. Gives me the opportunity to think and to work some things out in my head. I have for years seen this or used this for my own mental health, for my own growth. And the idea, until I started this live stream at least, was that I could walk over here. I could do the walk to the coffee shop, which is about a mile and a quarter, I guess, from my house. Um, this could be my meditative walk. This would be my time to really connect with the world around me, to really quiet my mind, um, and to find some clarity. And then the walk back, that's a maybe more of consciously thoughtful, might be consumption, listen to a book, a podcast, might not, might just be walk and think. But I started doing this a while back so that you could walk with me and I could continue the the theme, the topic that I covered in the show that I host every morning called Java with Jeff. Java with Jeff started out being my morning mindsets, and an audience member renamed it. The name stuck, and so I would call it Java with Jeff. But every morning I cover mindfulness, growth mindset topics. And once a week I read James Clear, who's the author of Atomic Habits. I read James Clear's 321 email. It comes out every Thursday. I don't get it. Doesn't pop up in my inbox until the afternoon. So I typically read it to the Java with Jeff audience on Friday. And we pick the pieces out of it that we want to talk more about. Had huge technology problems Friday, so I wasn't able to host Java with Jeff. And so I read it this morning. And one of the ideas in the email that everybody, or they got votes, so to speak, from the audience, people wanted to talk about, was this idea of a failure. It's really, and I know I posted the quote in the notes here on Substack, but we talked about repetitions, the successful and the unsuccessful, the successful repetitions and the failed repetitions. And said, competency comes from the successful repetitions, I think is how it went. But confidence comes from the failed repetitions. I think that's how it went. How the quote went. It's longer than that. But you can, like I said, you can look in the notes and read that. But I think it's back to this question, why do we fail? It's so that we can learn from the failure and then as we do these things over and over, as we fail over and over and learn that we can overcome, that's where that confidence comes from. That's where resilience comes from. It actually says that in the quote on the email. As I shared earlier, um, you think about any sort of athletic or artistic or any sort of endeavor. Like we do these things over and over. We practice the skills, the moves, the strokes, the whatever they are to build competence. And then if you take the case of an artist where you really start to create art is when you have this competence in your brushstrokes, in your, if you're drawing in the line work, whatever it is, and you really start to be able to take that confidence and use that as a platform, use that as the baseline. You start creating art outside of the edges of that. There's something I meant to remember as I was putting this in the notes. I forget now what it was. It had to do with energy in the universe. I forget now, but anyway, um, this failure, this idea of failure, it's it's inevitable. Right? The more we breathe, the more we move, the more we take action, the more inevitable failure is. I mean, none of us are perfect at anything. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do. You're just not. You're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail at things. Morning. So, what do we do with that? Right? What do we do with those failures, the lessons learned from the failures, or are you learning anything? That's what I was going to remember. I've read more than once that the universe puts problems, the same problems, in different clothing, maybe. The universe puts the same problem in front of us over and over and over again until we figure out how to solve the problem, right? Until we figure out how to move beyond this. We're destined to repeat these things until we learn it, until we figure it out. And whether you believe that's true or not, I mean, I think you can understand the wisdom there. And if you're an accountant, if you're a baseball player, if you're um, a teacher, whatever it is that you're doing, and you realize that your students are failing at something, you realize that your students aren't learning a certain lesson, you can keep teaching that lesson over and over in the same way. And it won't be until you have that aha moment where you go, oh, maybe they're not learning it because of this. And you change it, right? You learn from that. If you're a baseball player, why do you keep striking out on certain pitches? You're going to keep striking out on those pitches. Maybe not every time. Maybe you get a hit every once in a while, but it's not until you learn situational awareness and different pitchers' approaches and so on and so forth. It's not until you learn from those failures that you really start to consistently hit in that situation. Or, if you're, I don't know, I don't have any good accounting analogies, I don't think, but, you know, it's not until you remember to check the formulas and all the cells on the spreadsheet or whatever it is in accounting. We're destined to keep making the mistakes over and over until we learn from them. And then the resilience, right? The learn. I've described this a lot if you've been around here. I believe that resilience is the human's superpower, our ability to look back over time, whatever that time is, look back over the day, the week, the month, the year, the decade, whatever it is, look back, see how far you've come, see what's gone well, what hasn't. And then if you pay particular attention to the failures, if you pay particular attention to the things that haven't gone well, and you ask the questions, why didn't this go well? What were the obstacles that I encountered? What led up to those things? And you can start to identify those things, start to learn how to see them, how to predict them, how to navigate them, right? It's learning to navigate so that we don't run into the same situation. We don't swing and miss on the same pitch in the same situation over and over and over. We start to understand, okay, well, this is why, this is how I identify this as it's coming up. When I look back forward, look into the future, start to learn from that and understand how to apply it going forward. That's how we build resilience. Resilience comes from failure, but importantly, from failure that we've learned from. A lot of people attribute that, the definition of insanity, to Einstein. I think I've read that it may be misattributed, but anyway, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. I don't know that resilience is the opposite of insanity. I don't think we can draw that line, but we can, I think, understand that if we do the same things over and over and keep failing at the same things over and over because we didn't learn from it, then I guess to the point of James Clear's idea in his email, one, we're not going to build any confidence, nor are we going to build any competence. I think I said that backwards, but we definitely, you know, just realize how much I say, we definitely are, if we don't have competence, if we're not building competence, we're not going to build confidence. It's just not gonna, it's not gonna happen. that might be a definition of insanity too. Although I question that because I think we see a lot of this. It's pretty wild. It's pretty bizarre. I think we see a lot of this right now. There are a lot of people that are really confident despite their lack of competence. So maybe there's a disconnect in here somewhere. I'm not sure. But back to the idea, if you just joined me on the walk here, my question is, why do we fail? And not in the sense of why can't we figure out how to do this? But it's in the sense of what's the purpose? The purpose of failure. Someone has gone around. All right, there are a bunch of purple dots on trees. I live in an old neighborhood, one of the historic neighborhoods in Indianapolis. And it's beautiful. There's just trees and trees and trees. See all these trees. It's just a random street corner. And one, two of those two largest trees right there, as well as a tree across the street, they have purple dots on them. Someone went through recently, purple dots on a lot of trees. And it looks to me as if they have put purple dots on the trees that are close to power lines, to utility lines, say it that way. It's an old neighborhood. All the utilities are the power, the phone, internet, et cetera. It's all above ground. And the utility companies have a history of hiring tree butchers to come through. They're not arborists. They're not what I would call tree trimmers. They come through and they just butcher these trees. And you see they literally like lop the top of a tree off or one side of a tree because it's close to a power line. And I think it has those purple dots. I think they have something to do with that. But the way I've never seen them mark these before. And it worries me. The way they're marked, it's the way they usually mark trees for removal. And I hope that's not the case here. Because if it is the case, from what I'm seeing, you're going to take down about half the trees in the neighborhood. And it really irritates me because there are lots and lots of examples of trees that are marked in purple that have been here longer than the power lines. And that just ticks me off. Right? The power company would argue that they're doing this to protect the grid or whatever. But it's lazy. They probably argue that it would cost too much to bury the utilities, but what's the cost to the environment? What's the cost to the neighborhood if they go through and remove all of these trees? I mean, it's part of the character of the neighborhood. It's part of the walkability, the livability of the neighborhood. Just because, I mean, yes, you're trying to. We don't want to lose power. We don't want to lose internet. We don't want to, we don't want to lose the utilities. But maybe we need to start thinking about modernizing the utilities instead of cutting all the trees down. Anyway, that's my tangent. Nicole caught me on a tangent. Why all these purple dots? So why do we fail? If there's a storm and some of these trees get blown down or branches come down and take some of the power lines down, what are we going to learn from that? That trees and power lines don't mix, maybe. If it happens over and over and we keep butchering these trees over and over, again, many of these trees were here long before the power lines were. Maybe what we should learn is we need to think differently about how we provide utilities. What's that? I think it's a block. Blocked over now. In the tree over there. This is where maybe if I hold my contacts when I walk, I might be able to tell a little bit better. Anyway, God, good morning, Cole and Scott. Glad you're here. Almost to the coffee shop, still contemplating why in a Simon Sinek way, Simon Sinek view of why. Why do we fail? What's the purpose of failure? Because I really do like the quote from, or the idea from James Clear's email, the idea of the successful repetitions versus failed repetitions, and the reality that we can't, there's no way that all the repetitions can be successful. We're just not capable of that. So the failed repetitions are the things that we have to learn from. How much do we learn? This is an interesting thought. Maybe how much do we learn when we complete successful repetitions? Do we learn anything? Or do we just take those repetitions for granted? I'm sure it's not black and white. I'm sure it's not an either or, but how many times do we just go, okay, yep, keep going, check the box, keep going, versus something didn't work out there. Why not? This is our why, right? This is our why we fail, or we're, again, to James Clear's point about building resilience. If we can learn from it, we can build resilience. But if we take it for granted, if we don't give it any more thought, if there's no presence, if there's no intentionality, we're not going to learn from it. We're not going to build resilience. Traffic this morning over here. All right. I've made it to the coffee shop almost. Let me get across the street. Hopefully, I didn't even ask this at the beginning, but got the new phone. Hopefully everything's working. Hopefully you can hear me and see me. Again, sorry for being absent for so long. Be back tomorrow. And for Nicole and Scott, I'll see you on Chat with Jeff tomorrow morning at 8:30 Eastern. I'll be back here for a live stream at 9:30. Thanks for walking with me, and don't fear failure. Learn from it. See you tomorrow.